The long jump is a track and field event in which athletes combine speed, strength, and agility in an attempt to leap as far as possible from a takeoff point. Along with the triple jump, the two events that measure jumping for distance as a group are referred to as the horizontal jumps. This event has a history in the ancient Olympic Games and has been a modern Olympic event for men since the first Olympics in 1896 and for women since 1948. Rules. At the elite level, competitors run down a runway and jump as far as they can from a wooden board 20 centimeters or 8 inches wide that is built flush with the runway into a pit filled with finely ground gravel or sand. If the competitor starts the leap with any part of the foot past the foul line, the jump is declared a foul and no distance is recorded. A layer of plasticine is placed immediately after the board to detect this occurrence. An official will also watch the jump and make the determination. The competitor can initiate the jump from any point behind the foul line. However, the distance measured will always be perpendicular to the foul line to the nearest break in the sand caused by any part of the body or uniform. Therefore, it is in the best interest of the competitor to get as close to the foul line as possible. Competitors are allowed to place 2 marks along the side of the runway in order to assist them to jump accurately. At lesser meet-and facilities, the plasticine will likely not exist. The runway might be a different surface. Jumpers may initiate their jump from a painted or taped mark on the runway. At a smaller meet, the number of attempts might also be limited to 4 or 3. Each competitor has a set number of attempts, that would normally be 3 trials, with 3 additional jumps being awarded to the best 8 or 9 competitors. All legal marks will be recorded, but only the longest legal jump counts towards the results. The competitor with the longest legal jump at the end of competition is declared the winner. In the event of an exact tie, then comparing the next best jumps of the tied competitors will be used to determine place. In a large multi-day elite competition, a set number of competitors will advance to the final round, determined in advance by the meet management. A set of 3 trial round jumps will be held in order to select those finalists. It is standard practice to allow at a minimum 1 more competitor than the number of scoring positions to return to the final round. Though 12 plus ties and automatic qualifying distances are also potential factors. For record purposes, the maximum accepted wind distance is 2 meters per second. History. The long jump is the only known jumping event of ancient Greece's original Olympics pentathlon events. All events that occurred at the Olympic Games were initially supposed to act as a form of training for warfare. The long jump emerged probably because it mirrored the crossing of obstacles such as streams and ravines. After investigating the surviving depictions of the ancient event, it is believed that unlike the modern event, athletes were only allowed a short running start. The athletes carried a weight in each hand, which were called altera. These weights were swung forward as the athlete jumped in order to increase momentum. It is commonly believed that the jumper would throw the weights behind him in midair to increase his forward momentum. However, altera were held throughout the duration of the jump. Swinging them down and back at the end of the jump would change the athlete's center of gravity and allow the athlete to stretch his legs outward, increasing his distance. The jump itself was made from the beta. It was most likely a simple board placed on the stadium track which was removed after the event. The jumpers would land in what was called a scammer. The idea that this was a pit full of sand is wrong. Sand in the jumping pit is a modern invention. The scammer was simply a temporary area dug up for that occasion and not something that remained over time. The long jump was considered one of the most difficult of the events held at the Games since a great deal of skill was required. Music was often played during the jump, and Philostratus says that pipes at times would accompany the jump so as to provide a rhythm for the complex movements of the without error by the athlete. Philostratos is quoted as saying, "The rules regard jumping as the most difficult of the competitions, and they allow the jumper to be given advantages in rhythm by the use of the flute, and in weight by the use of the halter." Most notable in the ancient sport was a man called Shnis, who in the 656 BC Olympics staged a jump of 7.05 meters. There has been some argument by modern scholars over the long jump. Some have attempted to recreate it as a triple jump. The images provide the only evidence for the action, so it is more well received that it was much like today's long jump. The main reason some want to call it a triple jump is the presence of a source that claims there once was a 55 ancient foot jump done by a man named Phalos. The long jump has been part of modern Olympic competition since the inception of the Games in 1896. In 1914, Harry Eaton Stewart recommended the running broad jump as a standardized track and field event for women. However, it was not until 1948 that the women's long jump was added to the Olympic athletics program. Technique. There are 5 main components of the long jump: the approach run, the last 2 strides, takeoff, action in the air and landing, speed in the run-up or approach, and a high leap off the board. Of the fundamentals of success. Because speed is such an important factor of the approach, it is not surprising that many long jumpers also compete successfully in sprints. A classic example of this long jump sprint doubling are performances by Carl Lewis. The approach. The objective of the approach is to gradually accelerate to a maximum controlled speed at takeoff. The most important factor for the distance traveled by an object is its velocity at takeoff, both the speed and angle. Elite jumpers usually leave the ground at an angle of 20 degrees or less. Therefore, it is more beneficial for a jumper to focus on the speed component of the jump. The greater the speed at takeoff, the longer the trajectory of the center of mass will be. The importance of a takeoff speed is a factor in the success of sprinters in this event. The length of the approach is usually consistent distance for an athlete. Approaches can vary between 12 and 19 strides on the novice and intermediate levels, while at the elite level they are closer to between 20 and 22 strides. The exact distance and number of strides in an approach depends on the jumper's experience, sprinting technique, and conditioning level. Consistency in the approach is important as it is the competitor's objective to get as close to the front of the takeoff board as possible without crossing the line with any part of the foot. Inconsistent approaches are a common problem in the event. As a result, the approach is usually practiced by athletes about 6 to 8 times per jumping session. The last 2 strides. The objective of the last 2 strides is to prepare the body for takeoff while conserving as much speed as possible. The penultimate stride is longer than the last stride. The competitor begins to lower his or her center of gravity to prepare the body for the vertical impulse. The final stride is shorter because the body is beginning to raise the center of gravity in preparation for takeoff. The last 2 strides are extremely important because they determine the velocity with which the competitor will enter the jump. The greater the velocity, the better the jump. Takeoff. The objective of the takeoff is to create a vertical impulse through the athlete's center of gravity while maintaining balance and control. This phase is one of the most technical parts of the long jump. Jumpers must be conscious to place the foot flat on the ground, because jumping off either the heels of the toes negatively affects the jump. Taking off from the board heel first has a braking effect, which decreases velocity and strains the joints. Jumping off the toes decreases stability, putting the leg at risk of buckling or collapsing from underneath the jumper. While concentrating Depending on foot placement, the athlete must also work to maintain proper body position, keeping the torso upright and moving the hips forward and up to achieve the maximum distance from board contact to foot release. There are four main styles of takeoff: the kick style, double arm style, sprint takeoff, and the power sprint or bounding takeoff. Kick. The kick style takeoff is where the athlete actively cycles the leg before a full impulse has been directed into the board, then landing into the pit. This requires great strength in the hamstrings. This causes the jumper to jump to large distances. Double arm. The double arm style of takeoff works by moving both arms in a vertical direction as the competitor takes off. This produces a high hip height and a large vertical impulse. Sprint. The sprint takeoff is the style most widely instructed by coaching staff. This is a classic single-arm action that resembles a jumper in full stride. It is an efficient takeoff style for maintaining velocity through takeoff. Power sprint or bounding. The power sprint takeoff, or bounding takeoff, is one of the more common elite styles. Very similar to the sprint style, the body resembles a sprinter in full stride. However, there is one major difference. The arm that pushes back on takeoff fully extends backward, rather than remaining at a bent position. This additional extension increases the impulse at takeoff. The correct style of takeoff will vary from athlete to athlete. Action in the air and landing. There are three major flight techniques for the long jump: the hang, the sail, and the hitch kick. Each technique is to combat the forward rotation experienced from takeoff, but is basically down to preference from the athlete. It is important to note that once the body is airborne, there is nothing that the athlete can do to change the direction they're traveling and consequently where they're going to land in the pit. However, it can be argued that certain techniques influence an athlete's landing, which can affect the distance measured. For example, if an athlete lands feet first but falls back because they are not correctly balanced, a lower distance will be measured. In the 1970s, some jumpers used a forward somersault, including John Delamere, who used it at the 1974 NCAA Championships, and who matched the jump of the current Olympic champion Randy Williams. The somersault jump has potential to produce longer jumps than other techniques because in the flip, no power is lost countering forward momentum, and it reduces wind resistance in the air. The front flip jump was subsequently banned due to fear of it being unsafe. Training. The long jump generally requires training in a variety of areas. These areas include speed work, jumping over distance, running, weight training, plyometric training. Speed work. Speed work is essentially short-distance speed training where the athlete would be running at top or near top speeds. The distances for this type of work would vary between indoor and outdoor season but are usually around 30 to 60 meters for indoors and up to 100 meters for outdoors. Jumping. Long jumpers tend to practice jumping 1 to 2 times a week. Approaches, or run-throws, are repeated sometimes up to 6 to 8 times per session. Short approach jumps are common for jumpers to do, as it allows for them to work on specific technical aspects of the jumps in a controlled environment. Using equipment such as low hurdles and other obstacles are common in long jump training, as it helps the jumper maintain and hold phases of the jump. As a common rule, it is important for the jumper to engage in full approach jumps at least once a week, as it will prepare the jumper for competition. Over-distance running. Over-distance running workouts helps the athlete jump a further distance than the set goal. For example, having a 100 meters runner practice by running 200 meters repeats on a track. This is specifically concentrated in the season when athletes are working on building endurance. Specific over-distance running workouts are performed 1 to 2 times a week. This is great for building sprint endurance, which is required in competitions where the athlete is sprinting down the runway 3 to 6 times. Typical workouts would include 5 times 150 meters. Pre-season workouts may be longer, including workouts like 6 times 300 meters weight training. During pre-season training and early in the competition season, weight training tends to play a major role in the sport. It is customary for a long jumper to weight train up to 4 times a week, focusing mainly on quick movements involving the legs and trunk. Some athletes perform Olympic lifts in training. Athletes use low repetition and emphasize speed to maximize the strength increase while minimizing adding additional weight to the frame. Important lifts for a long jumper include the back squat, front squat, power cleans and hang cleans. The emphasis on these lifts should be on speed and explosive, as those are crucial in the long jump takeoff phase. Plyometrics, including running up and down stairs and hurdle bounding, can be incorporated into workouts, generally twice a week. This allows an athlete to work on agility and explosiveness. Other plyometric workouts that are common for long jumpers are box jumps. Boxes of various heights are set up spaced evenly apart, and jumpers can proceed jumping onto them and off, moving in a forward direction. They can vary the jumps from both legs to single jumps. Alternatively, they can set up the boxes in front of a high jump mat if allowed, and jump over a high jump bar onto the mat, mimicking a landing phase of the jump. These plyometric workouts are typically performed at the end of a workout. Bounding is any sort of continuous jumping or leaping. Bounding drills usually require single leg bounding, double leg bounding, or some variation of the two. The focus of bounding drills is usually to spend as little time on the ground as possible and working on technical accuracy, fluidity, and jumping endurance and strength. Technically, bounding is part of plyometrics, as a form of a running exercise such as high knees and butt kicks. Flexibility is an often forgotten tool for long jumpers. Effective flexibility prevents injury, which can be important for high-impact events such as the long jump. It also helps the athlete sprint down the runway. Hip and groin injuries are common for long jumpers who may neglect proper warm-up and stretching. Hurdle mobility drills are a common way that jumpers improve flexibility. Common hurdle drills include setting up about 5 to 7 hurdles at appropriate heights and having athletes walk over them in a continuous fashion. Other variations of hurdle mobility drills are used as well, including hurdle skips. This is a crucial part of a jumper's training since they perform most exercises for a very short period of time and often aren't aware of the form and technique. A common tool in many long jump workouts is the use of videotaping. This enables the athlete to go back and watch their own progress, as well as letting the athlete compare their own footage to that of some of the world-class jumpers. Training styles, duration, and intensity vary immensely from athlete to athlete and are based on the experience and strength of the athlete as well as on their coaching style. Culture. Track and field events have been selected as a main motif in numerous collectors' coins. One of the recent samples is the €10 Greek long jump commemorative coin, minted in 2003 to commemorate the 2004 Summer Olympics. The obverse of the coin portrays a modern athlete at the moment he is touching the ground, while the ancient athlete in the background is shown while starting off his jump, as he is seen on a black figure vase of the 5th century BC. Records. Jesse Owens, set a long jump world record at the 1936 Summer Olympics of 8.13 meters that was not broken for 25 years and 2 months, until 1960 by Ralph Boston. At the 1968 Summer Olympics, Bo Beamon jumped 8.90 meters at an altitude of 7,349 feet, a jump not exceeded for 23 years, and which remains the second longest legal jump of all time. On the 30th of August 1991, Mike Powell of the United States set the current men's world record at the World Championships in Tokyo. It was in a well-known showdown against Carl Lewis, who also beat Beamon's record that day but with an aiding wind. Powell's record 8.95 meters has now stood for almost 25 years, Beamon's Olympic record through the next 12 Olympiads. Some jumps over 8.95 meters have been officially recorded. 8.99 meters was recorded by Mike Powell himself, set at high altitude in Sestria, Italy in 1992. A potential world record of 8.96 meters was recorded by Ivan Pedroso, with a legal wind reading also at Sestria, but the jump was not validated because videotape revealed someone was standing in front of the wind gauge, invalidating the reading. Lewis himself jumped 8.91 meters moments before Powell's record-breaking jump, with the wind exceeding the maximum allowed. This jump remains the longest ever not to win an Olympic, a World Championship, gold medal, or any competition in general. The current world record for women is held by Galina Chistyakova of the former Soviet Union, who leapt 7.52 meters in Leningrad on the 11th of June 1988, a mark that has stood for 28 years. All-time top 25 athletes. As of June 2016. Men notes. Below is a list of all other legal jumps equal or superior to 8.75. Carl Lewis jumped 8.84, 8.79, 8.79, 8.76, 8.76, 8.75. Assisted jumps. Mike Powell jumped 8.99 meters at altitude in Sestria, Italy on the 21st of July 1992. Ivan Pedroso jumped 8.96 meters at altitude in Sestria, Italy on the 29th of July 1995. The jump was ruled invalid due to an obstructed wind gauge. Carl Lewis jumped 8.91 and 8.83 on the 30th of August 1991 at the World Championships in Tokyo, Japan. Brice Lapierre jumped 8.78 on the 18th of April 2010 in Perth, Australia. James Beckford jumped 8.68 on the 20th of May 1995 in Odessa, Ukraine. Marquis Dendy jumped 8.68 on the 25th of June 2015 in Eugene, Oregon. Joe Green jumped 8.68 at altitude on the 21st of July 1995 in Sestria, Italy. Kareem Street Thompson jumped 8.64 on the 18th of June 1995 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Mike Conley jumped 8.63 on the 20th of June 1986 in Eugene, Oregon. Jeff Henderson jumped 8.59 on the 3rd of July 2016 in Eugene, Oregon. Jason Grimes jumped 8.57 on the 27th of June 1982 in Durham, North Carolina. Kevin Dilworth jumped 8.53 on the 27th of April 2002 in Fort-de-France, Martinique. Women notes. Below is a list of all other legal jumps equal or superior to 7.40. Jackie Joyner Kersee jumped 7.49, 7.45, 7.40. Heike Drexler jumped 7.48, 7.45, 7.45, 7.44, 7.40, 7.40. Galina Chistyakova jumped 7.45. 7.45. Assisted jumps. Heike Drexler jumped 7.63 and 7.47 on the 21st of July 1992 at altitude in Sestria. Jackie Joyner-Kersee jumped 7.45 on the 23rd of July 1988. Olympic medalists. Men, Women World Championships medalists. Men, Women Seasons Bests. As of the 12th of July 2016. I denotes indoor performance. National records.